Just one moment. Let's go. Let's start off gently, shall we? It's a Monday morning, for God's sake. Well, good morning, and it is 4 minutes past 8. Well, we were 3 minutes late on this morning. Jack Demanio lives, God bless him. The reason that we were a little late is because I was all fumble bum again. I managed to push the wrong button at the wrong time. Never mind, I'm getting better. I push less wrong buttons nowadays than I did when we first started. Luckily, it looks as if I'm going to get my advisor back at the end of the week, and we will have all the right buttons to push again, and the old fart will get it right. Good morning, I'm Keith Hayes. They call me Mr. Keith after the... Well, they did. I worked extensively across the continent from about 1997 to 2014, 2015. And some people couldn't pronounce my last name, Hayes. They would say Hayes or whatever, and would give up. So I was known as Mr. Keith. And I always remember, particularly since he died about 2 weeks ago, Sidney Poitier in that marvelous film In the Heat of the Night, when he looks at Rod Steiger and says, "They call me Mr. Tibbs." A very powerful line, strangely enough. It's such a simple line, but it's just so powerful. So very, very powerful. So they call me Mr. Keith, out of Lewes, East Sussex, at now 6 minutes past 8, on Monday, the 17th of January. Wow, the first month of the year is tearing by. And doesn't it? It's only yesterday that we were having a holiday because it was January the 1st, or January the 2nd, actually. We had the holiday, didn't we? Or even the 3rd. And now here we are in the middle of the month. And all the turmoil and all the chaos of 2021 has followed us into 2022. And I hope, and I did hope at the beginning, my New Year's resolution wasn't exactly a New Year's resolution, it was that things would get better. Things go better with Coke. Well, I think that things go better if we put our nose to the grindstone and get on with 2022 and try to make it a good year. So far, we're not having much luck. The pack is howling. The mob wants the head of the Prime Minister. And it is amazing, because one of the things in the news this morning is that the BBC is threatened with what amounts to a £2 billion cut in its budget amid charges from the Conservatives that it is a biased organisation. The news is never independent and impartial. Now, one of the things that this impartiality of news is crazy, because it's not. It doesn't matter who it is. It reflects the owners. For instance, it is suggested that one newspaper here has not paid too much attention to the party issue in Westminster because its owner was at one of those parties and didn't want to highlight the fact. True? Well, probably. And the fact of the matter is that there is such huge confusion about this. But the mob, and in this case, the mob turns out to be mostly politicians, as well as all those people who come onto Facebook and social media, and they know so much better than anybody else. But the mob is howling, and all they do is they add to the confusion. And the whole idea that perhaps there should be a cut in the budget of the BBC, which I thoroughly approve, by the way, not because I think that the BBC is spendthrift necessarily, but it does a lot of things which it shouldn't do. We've I mean, one stage, a couple of decades or so ago, there was one review of the BBC where the auditors said it can't make up its mind whether it runs orchestras or is a broadcaster. And I think that it continues to lose its way. It doesn't know what it is. And this morning I watched an interview on the morning program, and the interviewer said to an expert, or actually to a government official, an MP who is, I think, at secondary cabinet level, but he asked several questions about Boris Johnson, which were quite legitimate, and then the interviewee said, "Yeah, well, Keir Starmer has also now been caught. Oh, I don't want to know about that. We're talking about Boris." Yeah, let's be balanced. Let's be balanced. So there are a lot of things that are wrong with our society, and probably I epitomise them. And the fact that I can be such a bloody loudmouth and yell and scream and stamp my little feet is one of them. Should I be allowed to do that? Well, the answer is yes, of course, because freedom of speech is at the very root of our society. And with all the vested interests, like wokes and the people who try to get rid of university professors or pull down statues or stick their bottoms to bridges, is they all are trying very hard to persuade us to think differently, but persuade us in a way that is not at all attractive. The power of the word, the power of the spoken word and the written word is very, very, very powerful indeed. And the fact of the matter is, it would seem that because we didn't think that reading and writing and arithmetic was terribly important in our schools for the longest time, is people can't or won't read, people can't or won't write. All we get is a lot of silly nonsense of people yelling and screaming and banging their little feet. Oh, yeah, okay. Here we go. Rupert Lloyd Thomas is here. Greetings from Wareham. Good morning, Rupert. And for those people who I can consistently say, Rupert Lloyd Thomas is a Louisian. He may be living in Wareham at the moment, and that is to look after his brother Julian. And he's one of the icons, an iconic Louisian. He gets involved in all sorts of things. He supported and ran for a while Rocket Radio. He was instrumental in getting the Firle Hill climb going again, and that's only among some of the things that he's done. And his wife, Annette, has just written a book about Mad Jack Fuller, who was an MP sometime in the mid-1800s, and who built follies, but also has supported things like research into the Davy lamp, research into Faraday's cage, which means that we've now got television. He built the Eastbourne Lighthouse, and he supported the Eastbourne lifeboat. He restored Bodiam Castle. He was extremely good to his villagers in Brightling at Christmas, making sure that they were all very, very well fed. But he was controversial, not only by being a 22 stone, but he supported slavery because that's where his money came from. And I'm surprised that somebody hasn't tried to pull down one of his follies, which are numerous around Lewis. He would build towers for no apparent reason. The suggestion is that he was such a patriot. He wanted to be able to look and view, in case during the Napoleonic Wars that there was any either news or that there was any flotilla coming to get us, and so on. But the one thing I do like about him, and I was talking to a former politician a good friend, and I always have a good time with him. And on Saturday we had a couple of pints together and just caught up on it. And I said the one thing that I really enjoyed was that Mad Jack was suspended from the House of Commons for a couple of weeks or so because he called the Speaker a pipsqueak. And I think that it resonates with the Speaker that we did have for a while, who my political friend says was actually not a bad Speaker. The thing is, he's such a pompous little ass, wasn't he? That he got up everybody's nose. Nonetheless, we won't mention Mr. Burkhoff. Let's no, we won't go to the newspaper headlines for a moment. Let's just look at a couple of things that happened locally, because on Friday night there was crowd trouble after the Crystal Palace Brighton match at the Amex Stadium, and the police came under fire with missiles and so on. Now that's just not on. If we can't, there's no sense in us saying keep politics out of sport, etc., and it's got to be pure. If in fact what we allow is rivalry between two teams, yes, and it's always been a bitter rivalry. That's traditional. When it comes to throwing missiles at the police, is not on, and it did happen on Friday night. There was a smoke bomb let off in Eastbourne's shopping centre. And it appears that a shooting, a hostage, and the hostage taker has been shot dead, is a Brit. And this took place in Texas. Held 4 people hostage, and there was a shootout. And the hostage taker, who travelled seemingly just to cause trouble over there. I mean, it's quite remarkable what people do now in the name of whatever cause they're supposedly fighting for. So those are the bits and pieces. The other thing is that there has been quite a substantial rise in the amount of road crime, if you like, people breaking the law on the roads. Quite a substantial rise since lockdown was eased. And it also, some people have equated it to the fact that there has also been a loss in the numbers of the police force. So I actually do agree with that on a spot basis, on the basis that if you actually look now, there are lots of people that will tear up and down Lewes High Street and in the streets within the town, and they're going well over 30 miles an hour. In fact, in some cases, I would say between 50 and 60 in populated areas. And why do they think they can get away with it? Because they're not going to be nicked. So there is an obvious problem there, and one that our local politicians should be looking at. Okie dokie. Tim Loughton, one of the MPs for Hove, I think it is, has joined the chorus of Boris must go. Well, that is, of course, what one would expect the papers to be full of this morning, and sure enough, they are. The Mirror, Johnson's scapegoats. The PM acts senior officials as he tries to save his own skin. Well, Boris has actually said, all right, if all these things went on, my staff shouldn't have been, I shouldn't have had the staff that I had, and I'll get rid of them. And let's get a new team in. And that's quite sensible, actually. The only thing is, of course, it leaves itself open to interpretation that what he's doing is he's blaming everybody but himself. But actually, he hasn't. He has gone before the House of Commons, which cannot be easy for anybody, let alone a Prime Minister, and grovelled and said, I'm terribly sorry that all this happened and that these parties were there and that I went them. Mea culpa, I've been a naughty boy. People aren't leaving it at that. And most people seem to be relating it to things that happened to them personally, that they weren't able to go to a funeral. They couldn't see their loved ones in hospital or in a nursing home or whatever. And I do understand that. But by the same token, nobody knew, if you go back almost 2 years now, everybody thought that, first of all, the pandemic was only going to last for a couple of months and then everything would be all right. And here it is 2 years on and it's still not fixed. Nobody knew back then exactly what was going to happen, and it probably was something that would never have arisen if there wasn't longevity. once again, I sound as if I'm defending Boris, and I'm not defending Boris at all. I think he's a complete bloody idiot. But what I do like to think is that the innate sense of justice, of fairness in Britain, does not disappear because of this. And social media seems to, which is totally and utterly unjust in the main. It's unfortunately, we've become an unjust nation. It's so easy to just say, "Oh, Charlie Brown said, what an idiot he is," without any sort of debating skills whatsoever. You say it. So, are we losing our sense of justice? Are we losing our sense of looking carefully at what's right and wrong? And the politician that was on BBC this morning was making the point that, hey, listen, I think that Boris has been a naughty boy. Yes, a lot of us in government do, a lot in the Conservative Party do, but there is an investigation, and it is really not fair to have an investigation and then start to talk about the results before the results are out. So I have some sympathy with that. Blah, blah, blah. Gary Toynton is with us this morning too. Good morning, Keith. Gary says, well done, Gary. Incidentally, Gary is a very, very talented artist. He's does a lot of very good sketches, and he's never told anybody. One day he just said to me, I do these sketches, and he sent me some. We agreed that we would do a program, and only because of the horrific things that lockdown have done has it been delayed. But Gary will be on Mirador at some stage in the first quarter of this year with his sketches, and good sketches they are. And he doesn't pretend whatsoever to be an artist. He just is naturally one. And these are the things that I think that Mirador tries to find. People who are lurking in the weeds, as it were, people that have not been recognized publicly, and that we can say, look, here is the sort of thing that's taking place amongst people that are unheralded, that never even thought that anybody would be interested in their art. So, Gary, good morning to you as well. All right, the Daily Telegraph. Johnson questioned by Gray over Partygate. Well, the investigator is actually spoken to the Prime Minister and interviewed him to get his take on the parties and so on as her investigation into wrongdoing goes on. Operation Dead Meat, says the Eye, and apparently Operation Dead Meat is to the operation amongst the supporters of Boris is to save his reputation and to keep him in as Prime Minister. So the Eye is Operation Dead Meat. Dear. But I mean, the guy has got to defend himself. That's only fair. It doesn't matter what point of view you take. You've got to give him the chance. It's so easy just to point the finger, isn't it? But we all do that, unfortunately, in the modern society. The Guardian, the PM, accused of attacking BBC to save his own skin. Right. Now, government policy is that possibly the license fee as we know it will end in 2027. And that no longer will there be a license to watch the BBC, which means that its funding would be cut dramatically. But also, right now they've sort of halted any increase for this year and next year, which is going to cost the corporation an estimated $2 billion. Now, I have some sympathy for cutting the budget for the BBC. A lot of people say, well, the BBC does some wonderful things. Yeah, but it does some awful things as well. Really awful things. I mean, the standard of some of the people in quite prime positions in broadcasting is just appalling. They haven't been trained. They don't understand what appeals to an audience. They don't know the little nuances and the tricks of the trade. They basically don't, because they don't pay any attention to them. And the whole thing about the BBC is it's like politics. It should be subject to reform, and it doesn't want to reform. it's too jolly the way that it is at the moment. I know I work for them some time ago, but I work for them, and inherently they don't give a fig about the viewer. That's the point. The BBC is considered to be inherently the most important thing. It's like a sacred cow. So if this actually forces some realistic thinking and reform of the BBC, and for that matter, broadcasting generally, because as goes the BBC, so a lot of other people follow. The one thing that you can say about Mirador Television is it certainly doesn't follow the BBC, and we do our own thing, and we do it because we think that reflects our character, but also the character of a huge part of the population. Many people enjoy watching us because we fuck up so badly, because we have old farts, and we don't have. Well, I mean, we have had some pretty young things, and some very talented people. I mean, really going back to the very early days of Mirador, when it was known as Eye to Eye, there was Lalana Daniels, who's just a first-class broadcaster. And Lalana actually has a social conscience, and she now looks after older people in some of the residences here, and is lost to broadcasting. What a pity. Sophie Harris, just a natural broadcaster, and she was only 21 or 22 when she started with us, and was most engaging and just naturally good. And she is lost to us because she got married, and now she's got twins. And I have to say, a very caring lady, because when I was ill a few weeks ago, the first person on social media was Sophie, saying, "Keith, if there's anything I can do at all, please let me know, because I'd like to help you." One of our past team. And then there's actually quite a superb talent, and you sometimes still see some of the programs that we do with her when we use clips and so on, and that is Annie Verrill. Again, lost to broadcasting, and how tragic. But nonetheless, she had a particular career pattern in mind. She wanted to follow it, and who are we to say nay? But Mirador has uncovered, just in this small town, 4 first-class broadcasters, all of whom, and I say this quite boldly, all of whom are better than most people that we have on the BBC or ITV or any of the other major broadcasters. They wear good, but there is no apparatus. Some people say apparatus. There is no apparatus in these big organizations to go looking for people. Scratch the surface. There's a lot of talent there. It's only being used by the broadcasters at the moment. The standard is appalling. It really is. Okay, right. That's the Guardian. The Times. The PM calls in military to stem a flow of migrants. One of the things that Boris is doing, and of course now the accusation is he's trying to take the heat off by doing some popular things, is he's going to hand over to the Navy. Stopping migrants crossing the channel, because it's got to alarming proportions. The critics say, well, he can handle it, the Navy, but can they do any more than's being done at the moment? Because a lot of it is rubber dinghies. What do you do? The battleship draws up beside the dinghy. The Daily Express, the PM, fight back plan to level up Britain. Now, I had to look up this morning, what the hell do they mean by leveling up? And apparently it's to try and spread the economy across the country rather than have it in various centres such as London and so on. But that's a very, very tough role. I mean, London is the leading financial centre of the world. Some Americans would say, no, hang on, Wall Street is. But actually, London has got the edge when it comes to financial services and financial know-how and so on. Don't always agree with some of the things that the big boys do, but nonetheless, they've got the expertise and they are world leaders. So what are we going to do? Are we going to send them up to Manchester? Are we going to send them up to Glasgow? I don't think so. That does nothing but actually weaken them, and therefore it weakens the economy. Now, some people have said, well, levelling up is to make sure that everybody gets the same education. How do you do that? The thing is that because of the very nature of the economy, people in London will get a waiting and so on and so forth, so they make much bigger salaries. So that's what the magnet that will attract good teachers. It is a very difficult issue, this levelling up. I understand that it is a very worthy thing to try and do, but it is a very, very difficult thing to try and do. And I mean, if there is one thing that's helped water down the effectiveness of the BBC, is because they decided, out of fairness or levelling up, or call it what you want, that they would have some of their headquarters in Manchester. Now that's okay. You send your big guns up to Manchester. Where are the politicians? Where are the key people that you want to interview? Where are the key stories? Down in London. It is following political correctness really does undermine our society. Nobody looks at things in a logical sense anymore, and then tells those people who are howling for so-called levelling up to bugger off and think of it carefully. Yes, I'm all for levelling up. I wish that they'd levelled up in terms of furlough and grants and so on during the pandemic. And they didn't, and people like Operation suffered. There we are. It's a fact of life. Right, okay. Daily Mail. Starmer must say sorry for drinks in lockdown. Now, I said on Friday when I was in full flow, one of the things that I would like to know is how many people would swear on a Bible, who would actually swear in a court of law that they didn't do some sort of partying during lockdown, particularly those people who are calling the Prime Minister a naughty boy. And slowly it's coming out that Keir Starmer, the leader of the opposition, it was a naughty boy. And other people are beginning to admit that they were at parties or they had drinks or whatever when the rest of us were facing the wall. With a letter from the NHS saying, face the wall and don't move. If you do feel the need to eat, so get a neighbour to go to the store for you. The neighbour presumably hasn't been told not to move. But Keir Starmer, and the Daily Mail says he must say sorry for drinks in lockdown, which he signally failed to do. So it's actually the political class, in my view, that is under scrutiny, not just Boris, not just the Conservatives, the whole political establishment. I mean, I actually plague on all their houses. I think that our politics is awful at the moment. Our leadership is almost non-existent. And those people who are in government now are there because they pick up a nice packet, thank you very much, and all these perks and their pensions and so on and so forth are much better than they are in other sectors. Oh dear, that's no reason. That's no reason. Let's get back to having a few statesmen, or stateswomen if you want. I don't care. I think that's another. Everybody's got a cause. And that cause never seems to be, let us make Britain a really good place to live. If only somebody would start an organisation saying, just make Britain great again, meaning make it a great place to live, great place to be educated, great place to work, a great place to play, a great place to live in terms of what you can get for your money, in terms of housing. Everybody's lost sight of all those things, in my view. The Metro, go pack Djokovic. Well, that's Djokovic is apparently on the way back to Serbia. His final appeal failed. He cannot go to the. He cannot play in the Australian Open. This morning, there was rather a nice tennis player, because I don't follow tennis anymore. I didn't recognise who she was, but she's apparently a star. And it was very articulate, and she said, "Really, keep politics out of sport. It's ruining sport." And I agree. I mean, football is just it's just silly, and also we adopt things which are not suitable to us. I once again was talking to my friend who is very politically knowledgeable, and I said I'm not at all happy with bending the knee or Black Lives Matter. And he said his view was that these things have been imported from the United States, where they may be more appropriate. They don't fit Britain, and they don't fit British thinking, and in fact, they don't fit the situation in Britain. We are probably far more tolerant in this country in terms of colour, creed, ethnicity, and so on and so forth than most countries in the world. To actually stir up the pot is only actually adds to people's resentment, and to actually making it more difficult to get equity. There we go. So go pack Djokovic. The Sun, on your own, Harry. They've taken the view that Harry is now suing the British government, which, for one sense of purposes, is just, since it is the Crown's government, is suing his own mother because they lifted his protection when he was in Britain. No more people standing with bulging shoulder holsters to make sure he's not attacked. And there's, I think even in the paper it says, well, hang on, aren't you the man that said you wanted to be treated just as an ordinary person? You were giving up all your baubles so you could be just ordinary, and now what you want to do is to be treated extraordinarily, and somebody else bears the cost, and when they don't, sue the bastards. The Daily Star. Totally ordinary bloke who does totally ordinary things says he's extraordinary. Well, here we are. The Star has jumped in on this as well and said, come on, Harry. Now, it is interesting because I was talking to my daughter yesterday, and generally speaking, we're not too far apart in our thinking, but where we did differ, and we didn't fight about it, we didn't fall out about it, but where we differed was she has quite some considerable sympathy for Harry, where I would say that what he's done is he's painted his own house colours, and now if he doesn't like them, he's stuck with them. She, on the other hand, thinks that he's not been treated at all well, and that particularly in her era, Diana was an icon. She feels that he is his mother's son rather more than William, soon to be, but a future, at some stage, future King of England. So there you are. You see, that's just how even within families they can differ. Luckily, my daughter and I don't actually tear each other's hair out. We like all good families, we squabble from time to time, but generally speaking, we do talk logically and sensibly about things, and I was very interested in her viewpoint. So there we go. And the Financial Times is GSK and Pfizer hold out for 60 billion pounds consumer arm bid from Unilever. Unilever has bid for sections of Pfizer and GSK, the drugs companies, the chemicals companies, and what Pfizer and GSK have said is we want 60 billion, and Unilever said, oh, that's a bit expensive. They said, well, pay it or don't. It's high finance. That's the way it goes. Okay, that's right. Rupert Lloyd Thomas, Paul Watts, Radio Tamworth. Yes, okay. Let's give a plug to that because I'm thoroughly enjoy one of the very shy in many ways, but with a magnificent sense of humour and a lovely way at looking at things is Paul Watts. Another, well, I think he was born and raised in Brighton, but he lived amongst us in Lewes for quite some considerable time and is now in Tamworth. And I know Tamworth a little bit. First of all, I was born and raised in Sutton Coldfield, which is only a spit from Tamworth. But then when I first came back from Canada, I lived in Tamworth for about a year and got to know it a little bit. A magnificent castle, quite small like Lewes Castle, but a magnificent castle, and a terrific church, which is a pre-Norman. And Paul Watts is one of the stars of Radio Tamworth. So if you're in that area, try and pick him up. Paul Watts, Radio Tamworth. Yoop-de-doop-de-doo. It's good for you, Paul, and good for Rupert pointing it out. Okay, where are we? It's 8:38. Let me just remind you about the weather. It started off at -1 this morning. It's going to climb to 8. The real heat, I suppose, or the sunny periods are going to be from about 11 o'clock this morning till 2 or 3 in the afternoon. Other than that, it's going to be scattered cloud. Now, I always give the weather forecast as it's presented to me, and then I look outside. At the moment, there is no scattered cloud. It's totally clear, and there is a lovely sort of tinge of sunlight on the horizon. The trees, my famous trees, are dead still. So the fact that we're going to get a little breeze has not actually come to pass yet. So whether it's cold or not, I can look down and yes, you can see that it has been a bit frosty. So more or less, part of the fact that the cloud has still got to arrive, and it can arrive at any time, of course, is that's a fair old weather forecast. A couple of things that I would like to point out to you is, I'll tell you what, let me just do this. Now, this is a promotion for the Triffid Chronicles. The Triffids were plant animals in the 1950s. They took over the earth because mankind was blinded by a meteor shower, and the Triffids, which had been cultivated, stood in line, produced oil, suddenly got wind of the fact that they were able to attack us, and they did. And they took over. John Wyndham, 1950, the day of the Triffids. My day of the Triffids is the Triffids are on the way back. We didn't eradicate them. They're watching for our weaknesses. And our weaknesses is that mankind is now blinded by computers. We are totally indiscriminate about computers. They do all sorts of things for which nobody holds responsibility. Nobody even knows what they're doing. And that goes to banks, and financial institutions, and government, and big business and it's all crazy because the Triffids are lurking and they are ready. More computers screw us up. They are waiting and lurking and ready to take over. So watch out. If you go down into the countryside, you hear the hum of the insects and the tweet of the birds. Triffids are lurking somewhere amongst them. So there, that's what that's all about. The Triffid Chronicles on Mirador. First episode later this week. Okay, there we go. That's what the Day of the Triffids is all about. Thank you for being with me. We will, it's 8:42. Just a very, very quick rundown of those things that aren't in the papers this morning, and particularly locally. On Friday night, a bit of trouble between Crystal Palace and Brighton fans, where stuff were hurled at the police. The interesting thing is, if you talk to a copper, he'll tell you that the last thing that he really ever wants to go and cover is a domestic dispute, because whereas perhaps two partners are flaying one another silly, is the moment that a policeman appears, is they then join forces and the policeman becomes the object of hate. And this is obviously true of football fans. They're busy battling one another. The police turn up to try and do something about it, and they immediately turn on the police and give them a bad time. So that happened down at the Amex Stadium. A smoke bomb in a smoke bomb is let off in East. Things crop up and pings on my phone as we're going along. I always have to take a look in case it's something terribly urgent that I should be passing on to you. A smoke bomb in the shopping centre in Eastbourne. I think it was on Saturday. The number of road crimes, if you like, whether that's speeding or accidents or deliberate accidents and so on, is on the increase. And apparently that has raised the issue of perhaps police recruitment is on the decrease. Now, I'm not sure about that last one. That's what I was reading from, or getting the message from what I was reading and listening about that particular issue. I will check it out just to make sure that we're not passing on misinformation. And the Texas siege is somebody from the United Kingdom has went to Texas and took 4 people hostage to make a point of some sort. He's been shot dead, and the hostages are, I think, freed. I don't think that they were. They didn't end up fatalities. Those are the things that are floating around. And the other thing is that, of course, there is still tension on the Ukraine border between NATO, EU, ourselves, other Western nations, and Russia. Not a bad morning, I suppose. It's 8:44, so I'm going to say toodle pip. Thank you for being with me. I'm sure that I've said a lot of things this morning with which you disagree, and by all means, if you see him in the street, accost me. Oi, you can say, oi. I didn't like what you said this morning, Keith. One of the things that I am delighted about is that my hat, which has been 3 times around the world and is almost 40 or 50 countries, and which I've valued at 150,000 plus £1 because Harrison Ford's Trilby is that's what it fetched at auction 6 months or so ago. My hat continues to be the centre of attention, and it's funny. People do still come up to me and say, "Hello, are you the television man?" Reluctantly, I say, "Yes, I am." And they say, "Yes, we recognise the hat and we recognise the scarf." And then they look at my face as if to say, hadn't thought that face would be there. Well, it's the only face I've got. I'm terribly sorry. You just have to put up with it as long as I actually rant and rave first thing in the morning. I'll break an egg. 8:46. Time to go. Let's just make sure that no more comments. The 3 from Rupert Lloyd Thomas, from Gary Toynton, and from Rupert about Paul Watts, Radio Tamworth. Good stuff. Delighted to have been with you, and I hope that you'll join me again tomorrow. We are beginning to amass a guest list so that we can bring you some interesting people, not necessarily from Lewis. We are not parochial. We are local, but we're not parochial. We'd like to find out what's happening in the rest of the world as it applies to things here. And in fact, in Lewis Present, there was one issue where somebody said, "Oh, this is hardly local." Can't remember what it was now. But Mick Symes defended it quite robustly. And he said, yes, but this is the sort of thing that can affect us in Lewis. And that is the right approach. We can look at local issues, but we need to see them in the context of what's happening in the rest of the world. Other than meaningless. Otherwise, there are just, has anybody seen my cat? That's an important thing for some outlets, not for us. And there we are. Okay. See you tomorrow. Toodle pip. Yeah, what shall we play out with? Oh, let's do it gently and nicely.